What's up, guys? Don't forget to smash that like button, drop a comment, hype up the video, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe and join the family. A group of people were gathered waiting to be attended to, but the desk was empty and everyone was growing increasingly irritated by the situation. A young man said it would be better to make room for the office next door so it would not be so cramped there. Another young man noticed a woman sitting alone and began to wonder why the inflexible, indestructible cultural and creative company Limited had no one in line. What was most surprising was that there was no one at all in that company's line. On the other hand, the line he was in was completely full, and it would take 2 days before it was his turn. People in the line were shouting that they would work the maximum number of hours possible per week, and even for free, and some even offered to pay for the internship. The young man decided it was better to try his luck and went over to the girl's desk. As soon as he approached, she lifted her head and began to look at him, asking him to give a brief personal introduction. The boy greeted her, saying that his name was Yan Wenhan, that he had graduated in civil engineering from the City University of Technology with an overall GPA of 3.56, that he had received scholarships from the university several times, and that his strengths were kindness and ease of communication. She asked whether he was a good worker and if he never complained. Wenhan replied that he was, but felt a little worried, thinking that the girl had probably found his resume too long, which was why he already knew this was a risky attempt, especially at other companies since there were so many people looking for jobs that he could barely even get on the list. He was only there to try his luck. A cultural company was not even part of his field of study, so perhaps he would have to give up. The woman began to smile and congratulated him, saying that he was hired, leaving the young man stunned. She stood up excitedly, saying that he was the talent the company had been looking for. The protagonist remained shocked and asked how he could possibly be a talent while thinking that this could not be possible, since 99 out of every 100 contemporary university students write their resumes using the same template. He was so surprised that he even wondered whether he was taking part in some bizarre reality show. But the woman kept confirming that he was a talent and asked what he thought about a monthly salary of $20,000, 6 types of insurance, a housing fund, and 20 days of paid vacation per year. The company offered excellent opportunities for professional growth. Outstanding employees were selected every year, and the year-end bonus was also very generous. The protagonist could not believe that she was offering a monthly salary of $20,000. Houses were not selling now, and civil engineering graduates were worth nothing, so they had to fight for a job even if it was just carrying bricks at a construction site, making that salary seem unreal. The interviewer was surprised, wondering why the boy had not accepted immediately and whether it was because he thought the salary was too low. However, she had done market research before leaving Silicon Valley, and this salary definitely met the expectations of 99% of recent graduates. Even so, this planted a doubt in her mind, making her wonder whether she should bring it up again, as it might seem too fake. On the other hand, the protagonist thought the salary was too good to be true, suspecting it could even be some kind of pyramid scheme trying to harvest his organs. Because someone like him, who had never even won 20 yuan on a scratch card, could not possibly be that lucky. She noticed that the protagonist was acting strangely, thinking that the person in front of her seemed vulnerable, as his eyes looked like they were searching for an escape. Wenhan sensed that there was something wrong with that look and stood up to apologize, saying that he had just remembered something urgent he needed to do. However, he felt a frightening presence staring at him, and the woman simply told him to sit down. Wenhan sat back down, but that presence was so terrifying that his legs became weak and trembled. She asked for just one more minute to try to trick him, but realized she had misspoken and quickly tried to correct herself, saying that she would like him to stay. However, the protagonist had noticed that she had tried to say scam but changed it quickly. The girl explained that the salary might seem somewhat deceptive, but he could verify the company. She showed him her phone, saying that there were public listings for everything and that they were even a state-owned corporate company, which proved their reputation was guaranteed, so he could rest assured. Wenhan saw that the company had a registered capital of 300 million RMB. It was a digital, cultural, and creative content application service company and an organizer of cultural and artistic exchange activities, with fully paid-in capital of 300 million RMB. It also engaged in design exchange activities and advertising agency services, excluding patent agency services and film production services, and it could not operate in sectors prohibited by national and local industrial policies. After seeing more about the company, he thought it really did look like a legitimate business, with no legal disputes and solid capital, and it had been established for 15 years, making it an old company. Even so, he still could not quite understand why he was being hired, since he was a civil engineering student and his professional experience had nothing to do with this. so why had he been chosen? The woman continued trying to persuade him, saying that she understood his concern and explaining that Wujian Valley had recently received a tourism development project that required the construction of a new leisure area, so they needed to hire someone to supervise the construction of that area. The company did not have professionals in this field and also did not trust external hires, so this position was actually a newly created role. Wenhan kept thinking about it but began to understand a bit more since it was much easier to continue in his original profession. The interviewer said she had read his resume carefully and that it was not like those flowery resumes. His seemed very sincere and pragmatic. The company had no financial problems, and the philosophy they followed was not to exploit employees, but to promote happiness at work. Even the janitor's starting salary was $20,000. Hearing this, the protagonist said that it seemed the company was very wealthy. She confirmed this and explained that one of the main reasons he had been chosen was that the company was a bit superstitious, and the last 3 digits of his phone number were 888, which seemed very auspicious and would bring good luck to the company. Wenhan said that in fact the end of science was metaphysics and questioned who was not superstitious when running a business. A few minutes later, she was preparing the contract, but the protagonist asked whether signing a contract was not a bit hasty. The woman asked him to wait a moment, saying that when there is talent, one must act immediately. As soon as she finished the contract, she congratulated him again and welcomed him to the company. Wenhan felt happy and decided that he would do his utmost to repay the company's trust. She explained that he did not need to repay the company, he just needed not to run away. Wenhan felt a little confused by this suspicious remark. The woman tried to smooth things over, saying that he had talent and she did not want to lose him, and asked him to go home and pack his things, since he could start next Monday. She had already bought the high-speed train ticket, and when he arrived at the station, a colleague from the company would pick him up. Wenhan asked how she had bought the ticket so quickly, and then the old saying, "The arrow is on the bowstring and must be released," suddenly made perfect sense. The woman explained that when he signed the contract, she had been able to see his ID information. So she bought the ticket and that the travel details should already have been synchronized to his phone, and now that everything was settled, they would see each other again next week. Wenhan asked whether he could leave now, and she said yes. The start date was February 28, 2024. As he left, she simply watched him with a fixed gaze. The next day at the station, the protagonist was informing his father and mother that he had gotten a job with a monthly salary of $5,000 and now needed to report to the company. He thought that at first, he needed to lie a little to his family because if he told them the true starting salary, they might become suspicious and call the police. His parents were happy, saying this was excellent news. Now he needed to work hard since it was difficult to find a job these days, so he had to perform very well. Wenhan asked his mother not to worry, saying he would always do his best, but that he had to hang up because he was about to board the train. She said goodbye and wished her son a wonderful and safe trip. He looked at the screen showing the travel information and noticed that there was a designated station and a specific boarding time, and it felt somewhat like a scene from a certain foreign movie. Boarding began, and the train staff said that 8 hours of travel were required to reach the destination. Wenhan sat in his seat preparing to sleep. The journey began, and after a night passed, it was announced that the train was about to arrive at Indestructible Station and that passengers needed to prepare to disembark on time. When he woke up and looked to the side, the protagonist was surprised because the place had beautiful scenery and was very lively. The prices of accommodation did not seem low, and he had forgotten to ask whether the company provided lodging, but one thing caught his attention even more. Everyone was dressed in a slightly unusual way, as if there were some kind of comic convention nearby. He remained standing at Indestructible Station, since the company had said someone would come there to pick him up. A person who was also there, looking at a photo of the protagonist, managed to spot him in the crowd and said it was him. She ran over, and Wenhan realized someone was approaching. The girl leapt forward and hugged him tightly, saying that Big Brother had finally arrived. Wenhan thought that this corporate culture was truly passionate, but she should not underestimate the mental strength cultivated by a university student over 4 years. He tried to push her away, saying that this was too much enthusiasm, but it was useless. She continued clinging to him, making him feel even more embarrassed. The girl finally let go, saying she was just very excited to see him and that, judging by his reaction, he was out of breath. She could not believe that the master had managed to trick a babysitter for her. The protagonist introduced himself by name and asked what hers was. She said her name was Yuxin, but he could call her Little Koi because cats love to eat them. The protagonist smiled and said he would call her Little Fish and wished them a good and pleasant cooperation. Yuxin grabbed his hand and, full of enthusiasm, said it would definitely be pleasant. She asked him to follow her, as the master had instructed her to take him to the company. The protagonist felt confused, wondering whether all the company titles were two-dimensional, but this was already to be expected from a cultural and creative company, since he had heard that employees at such companies were like this, and for many Lolita fashion enthusiasts and cosplayers, it was not strange to wear any kind of clothing. They went outside and Wenhan kept looking at her ears, thinking the texture was surprisingly good, and also unable to understand how they were attached, since they seemed to grow directly from her head. Yuzin unlocked the motorcycle and the protagonist stared at it, thinking that the bright golden color did not look like paint and had a very realistic texture. And even though he had seen countless vehicles, he had never seen that model before. Perhaps they had built it themselves. Yuzin apologized, saying she had not managed to learn how to drive and therefore had not obtained a driver's license, and that her other senior brothers were all very busy, so the only thing she could do was take him on an electric scooter. Wenhan said it was fine since he did not mind, and could even better appreciate the city scenery. He felt that she was very kind and that the company environment must be excellent, and that as a simple civil engineering dog, he had been very lucky to get this job. Yushin ran to the electric scooter and asked him to get on. As they headed toward the company, he thought that being driven by a girl while sitting on the back seat of an electric scooter was a very different experience, and he did not know where he should hold on, since he was not very good at hugging a girl's waist from behind. But Yushin looked at him and asked whether he was not going to hold on tight because, if he did not, he needed to be very careful not to fall since they were about to fly over the mountains. Still a bit embarrassed, he decided not to hold on to her, saying that his centrifugal force was very good until he realized that she had said they were going to fly over the mountains. The speed began to increase drastically and they literally started flying over the mountains. Wenhan clung to her, asking what he had just seen and whether those were particles of light. Fear began to take hold of him because the place was becoming increasingly remote, and perhaps she was taking him into the mountains to harvest all his organs. And maybe the claws of the devil had already reached the interior of the homeland and his fate was to have his organs stolen. The protagonist tried to calm himself and looked at his companion, thinking he needed to find a way to jump. With no other choice, he gathered his courage and leapt off the scooter, thinking he had successfully escaped. But Yushin simply appeared, scooped him up in her arms, and with a smile explained that the master had already said he might try to run and had told her not to let the frightened duck fly away. Wenhan became even more terrified and began to struggle, saying that this place was in the middle of nowhere with no bus stops, train stations, or subway stations, and that he could not even call a taxi. Yushin asked him to give up the idea of trying to escape. Wenhan shouted that he would like to keep at least one of his organs and that she could have all the rest. They stopped in the middle of the forest and she asked what he was talking about. The protagonist continued begging, saying that he had elderly parents and no children yet, asking her to leave him at least one. Yushin said that it seemed someone was misunderstanding everything, but that he should not think about running away. Once the agreement was signed, alive, he would become the master's servant, and dead, he would become the master's corpse. And if he continued like this without obeying, then his fate would be worse than death. Wenhan asked her to let him go, saying he would no longer try to escape. Yuksin threw him to the ground, telling him to keep his word. But the protagonist wondered whether she really believed that, and if not now, when he should try to escape. Since he did not care about the agreement and what they could do to him if he managed to get away, after all, a modern university student could escape a pyramid scheme. He tried to distract her by shouting that there was a pig flying in the sky. Yuksin began to look around, asking whether spiritual pigs could really fly, and the protagonist took advantage of the distraction and tried to run as fast as possible, thinking that strength could be doubled and poverty could be transformed. But his organs must never be removed. Yuksin said she did not see any flying pigs, and when she looked to the side, she saw him running again. She became irritated, shouting that he was not behaving himself and that he was also lying. Wenhan kept running and shouted that she was carrying out a scam and was still so naive that she did not have the profile for a pyramid scheme, and that if she had the chance, she should run away too. As he ran, he thought that she had an electric bike and he burned fossil fuel while she burned electricity, so he would definitely be caught. And to try to escape, he jumped into the fields to shake her off. But Yushin came at him full force and landed a kick, saying he would be punished. The blow was so strong that the organs he feared would be harvested were probably already destroyed. Suddenly, screens began to appear, stating that the condition had been met, which was being attacked by spiritual energy, and that the illustrated character book system had been activated. The protagonist was stunned and asked what that was, but another screen appeared showing Yuxin's statistics. Her name was indeed Yuxin. She was currently 16 years old and from the Spirit Cat tribe. Her exclusive skill was Charm, level 5. The overall ability values showed Physique at level 5, Strength at level 3, Agility at level 5, spiritual power at level 5, character familiarity 0, and a direct and swift evaluation for attack. Almost losing consciousness, he thought that she really was fast and ruthless when attacking. She approached, saying that she had kicked too fast again and had not aimed properly, and hoped she had not hit any vital points. Sometime later inside a house, the protagonist was bedridden, with the master sitting beside him. He began to wake up and sat up, somewhat disoriented, and the master smiled and asked whether he was feeling better. He was surprised to see her there, and the system was activated once more, showing her statistics as well. Her name was Yu Wenning, her age was unknown, and she was currently the master of Xuanjin Valley. She had no exclusive skills, her overall ability value was unknown, her character familiarity was also unknown, and the overall evaluation said that she was a heartless demon who could do everything except pay on time. Of everything that was happening, what truly shocked and irritated him was discovering that she did not pay on time and that his salary might be delayed. He thought of his mother because her son, after carefully passing the selection, had not entered a pyramid scheme, but another world, and was now about to become a slave. Wenning asked whether he had received any training for the job market, because he should forget the resources provided by universities, as they were not very practical nowadays, and since she did not like to waste time, she went straight to the point and explained that he could consider everyone there as cultivators living isolated from the world. Normally, the Cultivator Association supervised them and did not allow them to use magic in the world of ordinary humans. And even if accidents occasionally occurred, there were specialized departments responsible for damage control and public relations, explaining metaphysical events on a scientific basis, so most ordinary people were unaware of their existence as cultivators. Not really understanding what was happening, the protagonist simply listened to the entire explanation. She continues by saying that they really are a legitimate company and are not involved in pyramid schemes or organ harvesting, so his life and property are absolutely guaranteed. The nature of the company is quite peculiar, but all the benefits and treatment offered are real. Wenhan wonders whether all of this is true, and she asks why it would be false, since they have publicly disclosed information on Kachacha. Moreover, she says that he will work there as a senior brother and can think of this position as if he were the CEO of the entire company, because his arrival to work there was not a coincidence, but the result of her careful selection, as he is probably not an ordinary human and possesses abilities that can be awakened. After explaining all this, she asks whether he has any further questions. Wenhan has indeed awakened some abilities and immediately accepted the concept of cultivators in that world, but he still cannot truly understand what all of this actually is. Wenning is impressed by his courage and ingenuity, since he remains calm in the face of such a drastic change, and asks him to explain in detail what he truly does not understand. Wenhan thinks that, in fact, he understands nothing at all, because he is already the senior brother and has already awakened abilities. But one thing is not showing concern and another is truly being calm, since he still feels as if he is being treated like a black market worker. Trembling with fear at asking the next question, he gathers as much courage as possible and shouts, asking whether they are really going to withhold his salary. Wenning asks why he is talking about that, saying that a legitimate company would never delay salaries, and that asking such a question is impolite, so he must not repeat it. Wenhan becomes even more confused, thinking that the evaluation on the illustration panel cannot be wrong, and upon closer inspection, he feels that the director seems a bit dishonest. She asks him to arrive early tomorrow, as there will be a brief welcome meeting before work, and she will introduce some of her direct disciples who will be his colleagues in the future. She taps his head with her pipe, saying that as the most senior disciple, he must set an example and pay attention to his image. In addition, the clothes have already been prepared for him in the dormitory wardrobe, and he can choose whatever he wants to wear. The small meeting comes to an end, and she tells him to go out and take a walk as she's going to lie down. Wenhan feels a bit relieved, thinking that the company really is well prepared, but he will put everything to the test when he receives his first payment. Sometime later inside his room, he breathes a sigh of relief because he has finally officially become an ordinary worker, and from now on he will win over his colleagues with those diligent hands, and just thinking about it already makes him excited. However, he remembers that his master said he is the most senior disciple, but he just joined, so how could that be possible? Perhaps it is because he is the oldest. He decides to let it go, because now he needs to check the system again so he does not forget any names and can make a good first impression on everyone, since that is very important. Yushin is the woman with cat ears, and the one with glasses who loves to drink and smoke is CEO Wenning. Despite everything being very confusing, the protagonist feels very excited since he is being treated like a chosen one, Just like in web novels, possessing a system that only protagonists have when they embark on a wonderful journey to save the world, level up, fight monsters, and still have financial freedom. But while he is lost in his thoughts, his master approaches and asks what he is thinking about. She sits down on one of the cushions and asks whether he can get a lighter and a bottle of beer from the cabinet. Wenhan gets up to carry out the order while wondering when she appeared, since he neither noticed nor saw her enter through the main door. He takes the drink to her and she opens it skillfully and drinks with even more skill. The protagonist watches and asks whether drinking so early is how people stay healthy. Wenning asks him to light it, but he has no idea how to do that. His master looks to the side and says that she has finally arrived. Wenhan also looks over to see who has just arrived, but nearly collapses when he sees a serpent approaching. Another woman walks among the serpents. She is An Xuanzi, the second senior sister of Wujian Valley. The protagonist feels a little frightened, and Xuanzi kneels at the master's call. Wenhan thinks that yet another cosplayer has arrived, and judging by this, the scene is quite competitive. Another woman enters the room. She is Yang Yuyi, the fourth junior sister. Xuanzi is 23 years old and is an ancient Gu spirit. Her exclusive attribute is poison, and her exclusive skill is Gu sorcery. Her physical strength and power are at level 3. Agility and spirit are at level 5. Character familiarity is also 0, and the evaluation says that she wishes to rebuild her family. Yu Yi is a bit younger at 21 years old and is a demon empress. Her exclusive attribute is Fury, and her exclusive skill is Comprehensive Energy Burst. There is no information on her physique, strength, power, agility, or spirit. Her character familiarity is also 0, and the evaluation shows that she died recently in an intense manner after being ambushed in a previous life. The protagonist is shocked to see an ancient goose spirit and a demon empress. Wenning tells him not to mind them, as they are always like this, and that there are still other warm and generous disciples living there. Another person enters the room and with a smile on his face tells his master that he has arrived. His name is Yuan Yi. He is 22 years old, and he is an unparalleled sword immortal. His exclusive attribute is sword in hand, but there is no information on his exclusive skill. His physique, strength, power, agility, and spirit are at level 2, but his current luck is at level 5. Character familiarity is also 0, and the evaluation says that he is the male protagonist. Wenhan tries to rub his eyes, saying that his dog eyes are practically blind because that entrance is worthy of a protagonist. Even the evaluation and overall capability are different from the others, making him feel completely defeated. Yuanyi greets the protagonist, saying that they have been waiting for him with great anticipation, and that from now on they will be fellow disciples, sharing both good and bad times, and that no matter what happens, as long as Wenhan gives the order, he will be there immediately. Wenhan is surprised because even though that guy is the male protagonist, he has an excellent personality. Yuxin also enters the room telling her master to drink less alcohol and have some tea instead. The protagonist thinks that the day before he found Yuxin excessively two-dimensional, but now she is the most approachable and down-to-earth person he knows. Wenning says that everyone is present, so they need to do a brief self-introduction, and anyone who talks nonsense will be expelled immediately because she does not want them to disturb her nap. Xuanzi introduces herself, saying she is a reborn individual and her identity is that of an ancient Gu spirit. Yuanyi says that he is a transmigrator, an unparalleled sword immortal. Yuyi also says she is reborn. Yuxin says she is from the Spirit Cat tribe, and the protagonist feels a bit disappointed, wondering whether everyone's self-introduction is always this pretentious. Wenhan introduces himself by saying that he is a native firstborn. After the meeting ends, Yuxin explains that the previous day the protagonist's room was not ready, so he had to sleep in the guest room, but now a room has become vacant, and she will take him there. Wenhan looks at her, thinking that she is super normal. Shortly after, she opens the door and presents the room, saying that now he can stay there. Wenhan thinks that the accommodation is not bad at all, as it is a studio apartment with a bedroom, a living room, and a bathroom with personal and private space, and these living conditions are truly excellent. Yuxin smiles and says that from that moment on, they will be living together. The two begin to celebrate, and the protagonist asks his junior sister to take care of him, while she says that he should trust the care of the senior disciple. Wenhan says that now that they are all living together, he cannot ignore his responsibilities at work, and after being shocked by everyone's pretentious introductions that morning, the meeting ended without him having to start working, and it is not fair to receive a salary without doing anything. Yuxin explains that his work responsibilities will be defined soon, but for now they need to add each other on WeChat so she can put him in the group. However, he is surprised when he sees the group information. 5 virtues and 4 beauties. Today was another day without bloodshed. Wenhan asks whether she is sick, and Yusin explains that it is the group for the master and her direct disciples, that future announcements will be made there, and that participating in the group also facilitates communication and strengthens their bonds. That night, lying in his bed, the protagonist begins to analyze everyone's statistics and realizes that they all have very interesting life stories, but he still does not know exactly what the system is for, because if it is just a simple illustration panel, basically a character list, then it is useless to him. And with all these transmigrators and reborn individuals compared to them, he's nothing more than a background character in a Dragon Blood Paradise story, and if these abilities he has were available in another field, the HR profession would certainly thrive. While he is thinking about this, the system sends a notification and other messages appear saying that 5 character illustrations have been collected and that the character familiarity system is now being activated. When familiarity reaches level 10, the affection system will be activated, and different affection levels allow the use of corresponding abilities of the illustration system. He began to wonder whether that meant that if he maxed out affection, he would become invincible, and it seemed the system had some hidden tricks. However, all of the disciples had a fierce air and strong personalities, so he did not know who he should start with. After thinking for a while, he tried leaving it to chance and ended up choosing Yushin. Since she seemed the easiest to deal with, he would try to maximize familiarity with her. He sprang out of bed thinking he would start immediately and began rehearsing how he should open the conversation. But every practice attempt failed miserably because in the last 2 years he had watched so many short videos that his mind felt a bit scattered. So he decided to keep it simple and greet her, saying he would like to get to know her a little better. With that, he planned to start the conversation and invite her to look at the moon and the stars. Determined, he went to her room and knocked, introducing himself and saying he would like to get to know her a little better. However, no one answered. He thought maybe she had gone to some rehearsal, but it was already getting late. So he decided to come back another day, during daylight, since it was not very appropriate for a man and a woman to be together at night. Then he bumped into Yu Yi and let out a frightened shout. She slammed him against the wall and covered his mouth. The protagonist tried to explain, but she readied herself to attack. He grew desperate, thinking he had barely managed to earn any familiarity points, and now his life was about to end. And, accepting his fate, he closed his eyes, thinking his transcendent enterprise had failed halfway, but perhaps now he could at least get a rebirth or transmigrate. A few minutes earlier, outside the house, Yu Yi had been walking with a rabbit she had just hunted, and while washing her hands, she heard a noise. She went to the corridor and saw the protagonist calling out to his junior sister to talk. Looking more closely, she saw the silhouette of another person in him and thought it was him. She shot toward Wenhan at high speed and pinned him to the wall. Back in the present, someone shouted for her to stop. Yushin opened the door and asked them to wait a moment, explaining that the boy was the senior disciple and not a bad person. Yu Yi let him go and demanded to know if that was true, and still suspicious, she pressed his hand down with her heel, telling him not to move and asking why his back looked so much like her enemy's. The protagonist said he did not know what she was talking about and that maybe he just had a back problem. Still doubtful, she continued interrogating him, asking if he had reincarnated. Wenhan said no, explaining that he was just a normal human and that he had already introduced himself before. Yu Yi pressed harder, saying that otherwise it could be him again, coming to the valley to sow discord between them. The protagonist stayed lost, asking what she was even talking about. Yusin tried to calm things down, saying it was a misunderstanding. The protagonist began shouting, saying he would also like to know why he had been chosen to come to the valley, but if they wanted to know that, they would have to ask Master Wenning. Yuxin told Yu Yi to release him because he was about to suffocate. Yu Yi still believed the protagonist was her enemy, saying that back then he had used some trick to bewitch her former master, and might be using the same trick now since she did not believe all of this was just a coincidence. Wenhan said he did not want to be there either because he had only been job hunting and somehow got tricked into coming to that house, signed a lifetime contract, and they would not let him go back, so who was he supposed to complain to about that? Yusin confirmed it was true, explaining that the protagonist had indeed tried to jump off the vehicle while they were coming, trying to escape, so he really was not there by choice, and they should talk about it more calmly. Yu Yi finally agreed, but remained wary, saying that from that moment on, no matter what happened, she would keep an eye on him, and if he did anything like what he had just done again, then the conversation would be different. She released him, and the system notified him that he had gained 1 point of familiarity with her, marked as enemy. No wonder she was so emotional. He had no idea what she had been through to make her search every day. Yushin asked if he was hurt. The protagonist just put a hand to his neck, and she startled, asking if he was really injured, then moved closer, making Wenhan feel embarrassed because things were moving too fast. She told him to come into her room so she could apply some medicinal wine. At that moment, the great warrior rose within him, and the words, "Come to my room," began echoing repeatedly in his head, making him imagine she had pain in her leg and was asking him to rub something on it to help. Just the thought of entering a women's dormitory sent his emotions spiraling. A few minutes later, Yusin opened her bedroom door and asked why he was still standing there doing nothing. But the moment he looked inside, his eyes began to shine at the sight of the women's dorm, because it was his first time entering a woman's room, and he was a little nervous, wondering how he could seem more experienced, since before he had only seen girls' rooms in comics, imagining what it might be like in real life. Yushin still did not understand why he was frozen there, but the protagonist took a deep breath and stepped in. However, the instant he entered, he was stunned to see a guillotine, a two-headed fork collar, and even a 1,000-blade umbrella inside. He began to wonder if that really was a girl's room, and if she maybe subjected herself to all 18 kinds of punishment. Just imagining it made his legs tremble. Yusin asked if he was mocking her and explained that she had personally liked collecting things, yet he could not understand how a normal person would like collecting those kinds of items. Moreover, with all those instruments, it did not look like just someone who liked collecting, but that was to be expected, since there were no normal humans there except him. Suddenly, she struck a rather eye-catching posture and crawled under the bed, telling him to wait a moment, then dragged a chest out from beneath it. Wenhan watched with curiosity to see what was inside, but the moment she opened the chest, he was shocked and asked why she collected those things. Holding a pair of scissors, she simply said that if there was an opportunity in the future, she needed to show filial respect to her elderly father and let him enjoy life. The protagonist realized that those things must have belonged to her father, which made sense, since men really did like playing with weapons. The system notified him that he had gained 1 point of familiarity with her due to her poor relationship with her father. He understood she was being sarcastic and stared at her, wondering if she also had a dark side. Yushin told him to sit down because she was going to apply the medicine, and while treating his injury, she explained that the 4th senior sister was actually a good person, and pretty too, but acted that way because she had suffered terrible luck in her previous life, so he should be a little more tolerant with her. And if anyone was to blame, it was the scoundrel who had deceived her. Yushin grew irritated and crushed the medicine bottle, saying that if that man was reborn, then she would have to send him back to the afterlife again. Wenhan thought she needed to phrase things a bit more carefully so she would not scare him. Curious, the protagonist asked whether that man was an ex-boyfriend. Yuxin explained that he was not because Yu Yi was a demon empress, and therefore busy with her career every day with no time for romance. Wenhan said that then the man was simply an enemy, pure and simple. She smiled, seeing that he was lucky to have only a small scratch on the skin, and asked if it hurt. He flinched and said it did not hurt, but he had imagined what she meant earlier. Seeing her holding a few blades and smiling, he wondered if this was not a pyramid scheme after all, because it was terrifying. Yusin took a bandage, placed it over the wound, and said it was done. Wenhan thanked her for the help and said goodnight. Outside, Wenning was with her companion, Happy Liquor, pleased to see that they had had another day of friendship and unity. Wenhan left the house and began walking alone through the forest, thinking that this place was very dangerous. He had thought Yusin was a sweet and cute girl, but the truth was that she was also very fierce. So he needed to run away immediately. Yet he did not want to give up a monthly salary of 20,000, plus 6 insurances and a housing fund. Not knowing what to do, he wondered whether he was really willing to live like that among a group of people who were neither human nor demon. On top of that, he got attacked for no reason the moment he crossed paths with them. These people lived among hundreds of punishment instruments, and maybe one day those instruments would be used on him, and even if wealth lay in danger, he still needed to be alive to enjoy it. When he put a hand in his pocket, he realized his ID was still with him, which meant even the heavens wanted him to escape that hell. He celebrated and made a decision, running as fast as he could, leaving behind his luggage and the contract because he had given up on everything. Whoever has nothing to lose should not fear the one who truly has something to lose. After a while, he stopped running, exhausted, and a few crows began circling overhead, drawing closer and closer. Wenhen looked around, confused because he had been running for a long time and was still there. The city of Wujin Valley was clearly visible, and he could even see the lights of the tallest buildings, which made him wonder if he was inside some kind of ghost barrier. Not knowing the answer, he simply told himself he could not give up and kept running. Not long after, he was completely drained and stopped again, irritated by the situation. He started shouting, asking if he was really going to be trapped there forever, because something was clearly wrong with that place. A small scorpion crawled out of the ground and began climbing onto his body, but Wenhan just slapped it away, telling it to stay back. The small creature fell to the ground and rolled until it bumped into the foot of another creature. Wenhan sensed something had appeared, and when he looked up, he saw a gigantic scorpion staring at him. Startled, the protagonist fainted and lay sprawled on the ground. Even the giant scorpion froze there, not understanding what had just happened. Xuanzi approached and crouched close to Wenhan's head, pointing out that the master had told him not to run away. She ordered the giant scorpion to carry him back immediately. Sometime later, back at the manor, the leader sat waiting for the protagonist to wake up. Little by little, he opened his eyes, thinking he must be dead, but noticed Wenning beside him. Furious about everything, he sat up and shouted that he wanted to quit. Wenning explained that she had already said it was a state-owned company, a lifetime guarantee of livelihood meant to last for life and through generations, so it was impossible for him to resign. Thus, he would work for her his entire life, working all day long, and as long as she did not allow Wenhan to leave, he would never be able to get out of the valley. His master began to smile, saying that now he would receive a small punishment, and if he still wanted to run again afterward, he was welcome to try, since she had 1,000 ways to make him behave. Wenhan saw that all the disciples were there and began to cry in despair. His master came closer, saying that they were all friendly, so they would live a good life together. The system notified him that he had gained 1 point of familiarity with Wenning, but she was someone he absolutely must never irritate. With tears in his eyes, he agreed, but thought the system had told him that only after everything was already lost. Sometime later, Wenhan started writing letters of thanks. After working another week, he realized that he had almost nothing to do with the identity of the male protagonist. He could only say it had absolutely nothing to do with him. The third junior brother really was a show-off. 2 days earlier, Yuanyi had been on the roof practicing, and after finishing, he thanked himself, saying it was not bad at all. Wenning shouted in irritation, telling him he was too loud. The protagonist went over and asked him to make less noise because the master had complained, saying that disturbing other people was a small problem, but interrupting her sleep was a big problem. And if he kept making that much noise, she would personally make him ascend in one go. Yuanyi got scared and climbed down from the roof, apologizing, saying he had already tried his best to restrain himself by using only 1/10 of his strength, and that sword practice required perseverance. If a person did not advance, then they would regress. The protagonist was surprised, wondering to himself just how far that kid could regress, considering he was already halfway to becoming a god at the top of that cultivation plane, invincible against anyone. Yuanyi said he wanted to challenge the protagonist and asked if he would accept. Wenhan said that was not a good idea, since he was just a civil engineering student, weak and defenseless, and even if he could carry bricks, he could not fight. Yuanyi shouted that it was impossible because in his previous life, the senior disciple was always the master's first disciple, and anyone who could be considered a senior disciple was super powerful. The protagonist explained that he really was a civil engineering student and showed him some books from his field. Yuanyi held the books, stunned by the news. Wenhan emphasized that he was mainly there to fulfill a mission and take care of all of them, popularly known as a nanny. Yuanyi began to reflect on this, thinking that the protagonist really did take care of everyone and even cleaned up all kinds of messes. And with tears in his eyes, he concluded that the senior disciple was far too humble, possessing a masterful demeanor that truly deserved to be observed. Yuanyi realized he had been too exposed and from now on wanted to be more low-key, just like his senior. Wenhan was surprised, and the system appeared, saying familiarity had increased. A pure-minded genius besides sword practice, but whose general knowledge was almost non-existent. Receiving that information, the protagonist realized that Yuanyi truly was a sword genius, but on the other hand was completely innocent about worldly matters. And maybe in his previous life he had been locked in a small dark room practicing swordsmanship until he died. Taking advantage of the situation, the protagonist said that was true, and asked Yuanyi to be more discreet and not let anyone guess his abilities, because only then, at the critical moment, would he be able to act. Yuanyi cut him off, saying that only by being discreet could he stand out invisibly. The protagonist thought that was not what he meant, and maybe all male protagonists had bizarre thoughts like that. Yuanyi grew even more excited, saying that all those Celestial Emperor romances were written that way, and thanked him, because everything the protagonist had just said had clarified his mind even further. Wenhan came to the conclusion that, without a doubt, all male protagonists were truly crazy, because he had never imagined that one day he would not only become colleagues with powerful beings who could glide through the clouds and fly on swords, but that these super-powered people were starting to obey and listen to his advice. There were only two possibilities. Either he was going crazy, or the whole world had gone crazy. Yuanyi wrote down everything the protagonist had said and opened a subspace in the void to store the information. He asked if the human world was fun, because since his birth, he had never left Wujian Valley, had cultivated there his entire life, and one of his wishes was to see the outside world, asking whether Wenhan could take him out. The protagonist began thinking about it because, based on his recent experience managing the company, the Cultivator Association had strict requirements for awakened people like them, who could not use their abilities casually in the human world, and even a casual sword strike using only 1/10 of Yuanyi's strength could make the earth tremble, causing huge chaos. And the main question was whether that power could truly be contained outside. Yuanyi kept insisting, asking Wenhan to grant the junior brother's request, emphasizing that he had traveled since ancient times and had not seen the modern world, and that if this information spread, people would think he was just a bumpkin. Wenhan wondered what was going on because it was obvious he was straight, yet he was still susceptible to Yuanyi's pleading face. Suddenly, he felt something and was startled to see the protagonist's halo appear. Sometime later in his room, he began wondering whether he should take Yuanyi out or not, because if he granted the request, it would certainly increase familiarity and favorability. The protagonist thought he could ask his master the next day when he went to request leave, because it had been a month since he left school and he needed to prepare for the defense of his graduation thesis. And if the master agreed, he would impose 3 rules on Yuanyi, the main one being that he could not use his abilities recklessly, treating the situation as if he were looking after a child. The next day, Wenning was sprawled in her chair waiting for the drink to be ready and asked if it would take much longer. Yuxin said it was almost done because she needed to shake it for at least 5 minutes to make it foamy. Wenhan knocked and asked his master if he could come in, because he was requesting leave to return to the university for his thesis defense. The master told him to enter, and as soon as he did, he began begging her to let him go. He noticed that Yuxin's skills as a bartender were truly incredible, yet the company's staffing structure still looked like a queen and her group of flatterers. Wenning handed him a sheet of paper, telling him to fill in the information, and he realized everything was very formal, and that this was the first time he truly felt like he was working at a real company. Wenning watched him as she smiled because it was the first time someone had voluntarily informed her about needing to take leave, and the leave form had finally become useful. Wenhan filled in the information as fast as possible and told his master that disciple Yuanyi had asked whether he could go to the city together with Wenhan, because he had never gone down the mountain and was very interested in seeing the city. Wenning asked whether Yuanyi really said he had never gone down the mountain, and both she and Yushin grew a bit serious and fell silent. The protagonist notices this and wonders whether Yuanyi might have some very serious past, but the master simply hands him another form, asking the protagonist to fill one out for Yuanyi as well. Wenhan is surprised, wondering if that is really all, since there should be some stronger warnings and a list of precautions. Wenning takes advantage of the moment and informs Yushin that her father sent a message asking her to return home and go together with her senior brother. Wenhan only listens to the conversation, thinking that this must be the father who had suffered the 18 punishments. The master continues explaining the message, which said that her father was dying and wanted his daughter to go see him. Yushin lowers her gaze, not knowing how to respond. The master emphasizes that the decision to go or not is entirely hers, and that if she chooses to stay there, the family will be unable to do anything. Yushin remains restless and decides to return with her senior brother because she wants to see her mother. Wenning smiles and says that it is settled. Wenhan finishes filling everything out and says he will be going back, but the master asks him to wait a moment, saying she almost forgot something. Then takes another sheet and says that a letter of responsibility from the legal guardian is also required, and that if anything happens, the protagonist will be held responsible for everything. He holds the paper in his hand with the feeling that he has boarded a pirate ship. Sometime later, already at the station, Yuanyi is anxious, urging the two of them to walk a bit faster, and uses his ticket to pass through the gate. Wenhan starts to feel suspicious because Yuanyi had said he had never left the valley, yet he was able to use the ticket correctly, which shows he has some experience. Yuanyi tries to cover it up by asking the protagonist whether he does not think Yuanyi is very smart, saying he researched the high-speed train process on the internet and learned it, but Wenhan cannot believe that. Already on the train during the journey, Wenhan is relaxing, but then looks to the side, somewhat confused, because the system had said that Yuxin hates her father, yet perhaps due to family ties, she still worries about her gravely ill father. Since she does not comment on it, he chooses to ignore the matter, but Yuxin is visibly uncomfortable with the situation. After a long trip, they finally arrive at their destination. Yuanyi comments that Yuxin did not close her eyes the entire night and only stared out the window in a daze. Wenhan scolds him, telling him to be quiet and explains that something happened in her family so they should not disturb her. Yuenyi touches the protagonist and says that he always thought Yusin was the master's adopted daughter because it has been more than 10 years since he transmigrated into that world and he never saw Yusin leave the valley even once. Wenhan is shocked and asks whether she really never went out for anything. Yuenyi confirms that it is true and that for a long time he thought she was. The protagonist thinks that perhaps she was abandoned by her father because when she was asked whether she wanted to return or not, she said she wanted to see her mother. And imagining all the family drama, he concludes that this must be exactly it. The story of an abusive father who drove away the mother and abandoned the daughter, which would explain everything. Yuenyi suddenly shouts in surprise, and the protagonist asks what happened. He points at a car, saying that it is a Bentley, but the two of them are even more surprised when they look into the parking area and realize that there are countless identical cars. Many people are also gathered there, and the protagonist starts to wonder whether they are filming a movie. However, the crowd itself does not know what is happening either, asking one another who those people came to pick up, because it must be someone very important, on the level of the richest man. Wenhan realizes that the place really does not look like a film set and that they are probably there to pick someone up, until he notices where the men are heading and is shocked. One of the men lowers his head in front of Yusin, calling her second young lady, and asks her to get into the car, saying that the first young lady has something to say. That man was her family's butler. Wenhan remains confused and thinks that perhaps those people are there to seize Yushin, and if that is the case, maybe he can face them with a normal heart. The butler urges everyone, saying that she should not keep the first young lady waiting too long. She takes a deep breath and tells the protagonist that she has a small family problem and will contact him later. Wenhan, completely lost, says that it is fine, but Yuenyi steps in front of her and asks whether she needs help. Yuxin says she is fine and can handle it herself, and that the two of them do not need to worry. The butler continues to press them, saying they need to leave, and they start heading toward the car where the first young lady is waiting. Yusin greets her elder sister, who, without any emotion, says that their father was targeted in an assassination attempt, was gravely injured and wants to see her, so she needs to return immediately. She is the president of the Tmall Technology Group. Yushin simply agrees and starts to get into the car, while the protagonist watches everything. Yuenyi comments that it seems Wenhan also noticed that something was strange. The protagonist thinks that Yusin probably also does not have a good relationship with her family, and moreover, he never imagined that she could be the daughter of such a wealthy family, since families with excessively large fortunes are usually full of pressure and intrigue. Yuenyi explains that in his previous life, a cousin named Xiaoyan failed to cultivate and because of that, had his engagement broken off, which proves that large families are indeed problematic. Wenhan notices that Yusin had been uneasy the entire time, which must be related to family matters. He hears some people commenting that the woman in the car is the president of Tmall, and it is no wonder there was such a grand display, since Tmall is a leader in the technology sector with a market value that has already exceeded 100 billion. Wenhan begins to wonder whether they are really talking about the same Tmall that he knows. The system appears, showing Yushin's data, adding new information, and explaining that she is indeed the younger sister of the president of the Tmall group and has a poor relationship with her father. Yuenyi asks where they're going now. Wenhan needs to return to school, so Yuenyi should stay at a hotel near the university since it is easier, cheap, and has food. But while explaining these things, a doubt arises in his mind, and he asks Yuenyi, who has the title of male protagonist, whether he also has a secret identity, like a rich young master. Yuenyi starts laughing, saying that he is a transmigrator and, aside from being good at fighting, has no other abilities. Then hugs Wenhan and says that he left in a hurry, was anxious, and ended up forgetting to bring money. Wenhan examines him and realizes that he is completely empty, with only an identification card in his pocket. The protagonist becomes furious because he already found it strange that during the trip they had very little luggage, and not only did Yuenyi not bring money, he also forgot everything else. He starts thinking about the expenses he will have to pay and remembers that he still has not received that month's salary. Yuenyi asks what salary that is, and the protagonist explains that it is the salary they receive for working at the company. Then, suspecting something, asks whether Yuenyi has ever received that salary. It seems the system was not lying. Yuenyi reacts strangely and says that he also has a salary, but since it is the weekend, the finance department is probably not working, thinking that it seems the master is tricking the youngsters with salary again, and that a leopard never changes its spots. Wenhan remains suspicious and asks whether he is telling the truth, and Yuenyi says yes, because he would never lie about that. The protagonist drops the subject and takes out his phone to call an old roommate, saying that he is back and brought a friend. At the university dormitory, the girls become excited when they see Yuan Yi pass by like a true protagonist, and he notices it and decides to wink at them, making them even more excited. Wenhan is already irritated seeing that the male protagonist has special privileges and shouts at Yuan Yi to hurry up. Already inside the building, the protagonist explains that he and his roommates talked about it, and luckily one of them got an internship, so the dorm room became vacant, allowing them to stay together at the school for now. Yuan Yi begins to celebrate because he had never lived in a dormitory before and now will have the opportunity to experience the university student life. In the early hours of the morning around 5 o'clock, Yuan Yi wakes up and sees that Wenhan is completely passed out on the bed. He slowly goes over to the protagonist and tells him to wake up because it is already time to get up and train. The protagonist looks at his phone and sees that it is still 5 in the morning, but Yuan Yi says that 5 is already very late because the purest spiritual energy of heaven and earth is around 4 in the morning. Wenhan tells him to behave himself and go to sleep. Outside the valley, he cannot use his abilities recklessly whenever he wants. Yuan Yi keeps insisting that he needs to train so he will not regress, because that is a situation he does not want. While he regresses a little every day, others advance a little, and in that way he will never be the best in the world. The protagonist tries to calm him down, saying that he will not regress at all and that he just needs to trust this. Yuan Yi tries to argue back, but the protagonist cuts him off, saying that he needs to be a good boy and go to sleep, and that, moreover, floating around also counts as using abilities. After scolding him, the protagonist stops talking and tries to go back to sleep, but Yuan Yi keeps calling his name non-stop until Wenhan gets up in irritation and starts staring at him. 15 minutes later, they are still staring at each other. Wenhan takes a deep breath, thinking that this damned puppy has the look of a dog that wants to pee outside but is stuck waiting for its owner. He says that since cultivating is not an option, he will teach some basic military exercises instead. Yuan Yi becomes excited and eager. They go outside to the basketball court, and while Yuan Yi practices the movements with overflowing energy, Wenhan is on the verge of collapsing, wondering what kind of karma he accumulated in his previous life, because in this life he only signed a black market contract, had his salary withheld, and still has to wake up at 5 in the morning to do military exercises with someone. Yuan Yi looks at his companion and says that he is truly amazing, but notices that the protagonist does not look normal. Wenhan is crying, wondering what use there is in being a good person, and whether that can make up for his psychological trauma. The system appears to notify him that the familiarity between him and Yuan Yi has increased by 5 points and favorability has increased by half a point. Special explanation: as long as you train with me, everything will be fine. Affinity function activated. The panel switches to Yuan Yi's statistics, and the protagonist notices a new line appearing at the bottom, stating that his familiarity with the character is at 10 points. Favorability with the character is at half a point, and otherwise one might suspect that progress is declining. The protagonist is delighted to see that Yuan Yi's favorability function has been activated, which means he can use 0.5% of the abilities of the unparalleled Sword Immortal. The system confirms that this is exactly the case. Wenhan runs over and hugs Yuan Yi, calling him dear brother, and declares that from now on, every day at 5 o'clock, they will do military exercises together. Yuan Yi is stunned to see Wenhan suddenly become completely radiant out of nowhere. After finishing training, they go to a cafeteria, and the protagonist asks the auntie for plenty of roast pork, because good moods accompany happy occasions. And when he returns to the valley, he will need to wield a sword and experience the joy of being an unparalleled sword immortal. The cook looks at him, scoops some food, and dumps it onto his plate. He realizes that what he got is twice cooked pork instead of roast pork, and asks whether that is not a bit inappropriate. The cook asks who he is calling auntie and tells him to get out of the line and stop holding up the other students. Right behind him stands the true protagonist, a rose in his mouth, drawing the cook's attention. With a dazzling smile and a sweet voice, he calls her little sister and asks her to serve the food. Completely charmed, she starts smiling and says that at her age she is already considered an auntie, so why is he calling her little sister? And begins piling food onto his plate, asking if that is enough and saying that if not, the auntie can give him some more since he looks rather thin and needs to eat more meat. Wenhan watches the scene and feels nauseated by the repetitive lines. Yuan Yi puts a finger to the cook's mouth, saying that she does not have permission to say that even if she is a deer. Wenhan cannot believe what he is seeing. They go over to a table in the cafeteria and it becomes clear that there is no favoritism in that world at all. Wenhan is irritated by the damned halo of the male protagonist, who always looks like an angel sent down to earth. It only proves that his own fate is to be an endlessly toiling worker. He does not sleep well, does not dress warmly enough, and does not eat enough. Compared to the male protagonist Yuanyi, he looks even more miserable. But Yuanyi, full of kindness in his heart, pushes his food toward Wenhan and says that he will share a bit with him. After some time, the protagonist was completely full because this was the first time he had eaten so much in the school cafeteria, and being the senior brother of the male protagonist was truly wonderful. Yuanyi was feeding him, treating Wenhan as if he were still in a growth phase, even offering to get more food if he needed it. The protagonist told Yuanyi that he could go around on his own since Wenhan had his thesis defense on Friday and would not have time to accompany him. Yuanyi was surprised, saying that this was a necessity of human society. Wenhan remembered that his friend had not brought even a single cent and asked whether he could pay with his phone, but Yuanyi simply smiled and said that the master had said the protagonist would be the babysitter, so they could rely on him for anything. With no other choice, Wenhan took out some of his own money and handed it over, telling him to spend it wisely since 100 won for that meal was not exactly a good deal. Yuanyi took the money and thanked him, and the protagonist said goodbye since he still had a lot to do. Yuanyi called a ride-hailing driver on his phone, and within seconds the car arrived and pulled up beside him. The driver greeted him, introduced himself as a private driver, and said the destination was downtown at Dawei Square. He also said that if Yuanyi felt thirsty, he could freely take water and help himself as much as he liked, with an estimated total cost of 70 yuan. Yuanyi relaxed and said he would pay in cash. Everything settled, and the driver quickly headed toward the city center. An extremely bored worker was sighing deeply because there was no one there. Yuanyi approached and asked for 30 game tokens, saying he wanted to activate the Dragon Slayer machine. The worker said it would cost 30 won and asked how he would pay. Yuanyi placed the money on the counter, and the attendant began taking out the tokens, thinking that 30 gold coins would only last 5 minutes at most, and yet the customer wanted to turn on a machine, which was troublesome. The attendant looked at him and thought the boy was very naive, but since the tokens had already been paid for, he asked Yuanyi to follow him so he could turn on the machine, and when he was done, he just needed to put the tray of coins into the machine for collection. Sometime later, the attendant noticed that the young man who arrived that afternoon still had not left, and when he looked to the side, he was shocked to see a crowd, wondering when so many people had appeared. Everyone was completely amazed by Yuanyi's movements in the game, and although that game offered extremely high rewards, it was a true bottomless pit because people had heard it was not designed for humans to complete and was merely a scam to drain money. But what they did not expect was that Yuanyi was not human at all, but a sword demigod of martial arts. His movements were as fast as a Fortnite pro player building at top speed. The people around began saying that he was definitely a high-level player because from the very start, with only 100 movements and an unshakable stance, he clearly proved he was a professional esports player, and with such skill and fantastic movements, the gold coins were about to pour out. The attendant could not believe it was possible because only professional players could make a gold coin drop, since it required a response speed of more than 300 inputs in 10 seconds. Yet before his eyes, he began questioning whether Yuanyi was truly a professional. Still, he took a deep breath because he was not in a hurry. After all, it seemed like only a few hundred at most, and he had already adjusted the machine to hit the exact point where the gold coins would explode, so soon enough the player would return everything he had won. More time passed, and Yuanyi remained completely unshaken. The attendant approached and asked whether he was tired or hungry, saying that if he wanted to eat, he could stop playing. But Yuanyi just kept smiling and focusing on the game, saying he was neither tired nor hungry. The attendant could not understand what was happening, or why the boy would not stop winning. Yuanyi told the attendant that it had only been a warm-up, though it was clear that the attendant was very kind for even offering him a meal. Hearing that it had only been a warm-up made the attendant even more frightened, but since there was nothing he could do, he could only continue watching. Some more time passed and he approached again, asking whether Yuanyi was tired yet, but Yuanyi answered that he was not, and this repeated several more times, always with Yuanyi saying he was fine and full of energy. The worker was on the verge of madness, thinking that while the boy was not tired at all, he himself was mentally exhausted, because that machine's payout had already reached 10,000 yuan, which made no sense at all since he had configured the machine mode correctly, yet it was completely useless. The attendant decided to change his approach and explained that playing in moderation benefits the mind, but excessive gaming can harm the body, suggesting they take a break and offering him a drink. Yuanyi let the game end and agreed, saying he needed to rest, and asked to exchange all his rewards into gold coins. However, he did this because he thought it was better not to slaughter all the fat sheep at once, leaving some for next time, which would be better for sustainable development. The worker counted all the winnings and, on the verge of bankruptcy, said that it totaled 10,000 yuan. Yuan Yi then pulled out even more rewards from his pocket and dumped everything onto the table. The attendant suffered a shock of reality and, after tallying it all up, said the total came to 30,000 yuan, then begged him to accept a ring and a small gift, pleading for him never to come back. Yuan Yi took all the money and the ring and left the place laughing, thinking that life really is easy and leaving everyone with a tip. If you're unemployed, just wake up at 5 in the morning, train like a madman, become a demigod, gain divine reflexes, and go out gaming. While walking outside, he thought that now he could buy a snack for his senior brother. But it was still a bit early, so he looked for other things to do, stealing lollipops from children, helping the police arrest a criminal, and even humiliating some bodybuilders at the gym. Finally, the day began to draw to a close, and with a pile of shopping bags in his hands, he did not expect time to pass so quickly, but now it was time to eat. As soon as he entered a restaurant, the hostess greeted him as if she already knew him, saying he had finally arrived and asking whether he would like the same nice seat as last time. He handed all his purchases to her, asking her to store the newly acquired items. The woman began explaining that the chef had launched a new series of refined dishes, and that for the main course he could choose Mediterranean sea bass with secret spices. He went to the table that had already been prepared for him and told her to serve all the dishes, because he did not understand any of the names. She said she would store his things and asked the other waitresses to serve the appetizers. They set the table and poured some wine, but he was still bothered by the fact that he could not practice swordsmanship. The woman returned and said that it had already been 2 months since she last heard from him, and that he was probably involved in important negotiations. He asked what kind of business one buys for sword practice, since he had no affection for money and basically just wanted to buy some extra food for his senior brother. After finishing the meal, he asked for the leftovers to be packed to go. With a smile, the hostess said that considering his consumption, they were offering a complimentary dessert for him to take to a friend. He asked her to add another jianbing guozi with 10 eggs and also to grill 3 kidneys medium rare, because his senior brother was preparing for his graduation defense and needed to replenish his energy. He grew excited and also ordered a portion of 9 times turned large intestine, keeping the original flavor, saying that men need to be fierce. The hostess was shocked by the size of the order, and he added that he had seen this dish on a super popular variety show, so his senior brother would definitely love it. Sometime later, back at the dormitory, Yuan Yi told Wenhan that he had arrived and brought some things for him. The protagonist asked why he was so late, but was stunned when he looked at him. Yuan Yi told him to stop reviewing his thesis for a bit and go eat some late-night snacks. Wenhan could not understand how he had bought all that with only 100 yuan, and Yuan Yi simply smiled, saying that this was exactly what showed how good the senior brother was to him, because he never imagined that 100 yuan would make such a big difference. The protagonist took a deep breath, thinking that when Yuan Yi asked to go out with him, he said he rarely went out, but judging by this, he seemed quite shrewd, which must be the concrete manifestation of the male protagonist's prestige aura. The system appeared again, showing another 5 points of familiarity, and Wenhan looked at one of the notes saying that the main character has an evaluation of purity of spirit, being a genius, and that aside from practicing swordsmanship, his general life knowledge is almost non-existent, merely appearing to possess purity of spirit. However, Wenhan began to question the system itself, wondering whether it was truly reliable since it seemed to be glossing over or omitting information. As soon as Yuan Yi stepped a little closer, the protagonist noticed a lipstick mark on his neck, and at that moment he became genuinely convinced of something, growing even more irritated as he looked at the food in front of him. The next morning, the protagonist was with one of his old friends. The friend remarked that the final defense was already over and asked what Wenhan planned to do next, since he had mentioned before that he had received an irresistible offer and that the company's name sounded very creative. Wenhan said he would return to work, and the friend asked what he planned to do with the pile of luggage in the corner of the room. Those were Yuan Yi's spoils of war, and the protagonist thought that he really could not bear the weight of them. After packing everything up, they went to the entrance to catch the train and waited there. Wenhan looked at his phone, wondering why Yushin still had not arrived since the train was about to depart. Yuan Yi said that maybe she was dealing with some family problems and suggested that they go there to take a look. Wenhan pointed out that she was not answering calls or replying to messages, which made him worried, and that since they had come together, they needed to go back together because she was very cute and might end up getting lost. He realized that his babysitter attribute seemed to have leveled up, because that girl had stayed in the valley for many years, going in and out dozens of times, so how could she possibly get lost? And maybe this feeling was due to the favorability system, which subconsciously wanted him to raise Yushin's popularity. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Yuanyi said that the senior brother was really great. The system notified him that he had gained another 5 points of familiarity and half a point of favorability, congratulating the host because Yuanyi's favorability had now reached level 1, unlocking a character ability that allowed Wenhun to use 20% of Yuanyi's abilities. And if he continued like this, he could unlock much more. He became excited, thinking that Yuanyi was extremely powerful and that he now possessed 20% of all that strength. Imagining himself as a new Roronoa Zoro, even tearing up with emotion at having 20% of an unparalleled immortal sword. The system asked whether he wanted to test it, saying that he only needed to tap the character's avatar to use the ability, but he refused, saying there was no need. Yuanyi pointed forward and told Wenhun to look, and when he did, he was shocked to see, on the screen at the subway station, Yusin and her older sister announcing that their father needed to rest due to illness, with the older sister stating that from that point onward, all group operations would be taken over by her and that, as the current CEO known as Yu Qian, she would assume the heavy responsibilities of the company. In addition, she introduced her younger sister Yu Xin, a graduate of Columbia University, who would become the direct assistant to the new CEO. The protagonist was stunned to learn that she had graduated from that university and wondered whether this was just nonsense being spoken without thinking. Yuanyi noticed that Yu Xin did not look happy at all, her expression resembling someone being held captive, and he also recalled fragments he had heard from their master, that this company belonged to the Spirit Cat clan. Wenhun became irritated by the situation and said that they needed to go there immediately to see what was going on, because they could not simply bring her out without knowing anything and without ensuring her safety. Inside the company building, Yu Qian was shouting at her sister while slamming the table, asking whether she was dissatisfied because she thought the position was too low, saying that by wearing such an expression at the press conference, perhaps she wanted to sit in the CEO's chair. Yu Xin lowered her gaze at a loss for words and tried to explain that this was not what she meant, but her sister kept pressing her, demanding to know what she really meant, asserting that as an illegitimate daughter, she needed to learn her place. Yu Xin listened in silence as her sister continued, saying that the position of special assistant to the president was already a kindness granted only because the old man's mind was confused due to illness, and that she should be happier, or at least pretend to be happy, otherwise she would end up working as a cleaner. Even though frightened, Yu Xin gathered her courage and said that she wanted to see her mother, and Yu Qian responded by asking whether she wanted to see her mother to learn how to seduce men, mocking that this was exactly what she needed to learn in order to become a third party at the top. Yu Xin shouted to defend her mother, but her older sister stood up and shouted even louder, asking whether she still did not recognize her own identity, saying that she was not even a legitimate daughter, but a bastard. Yu Qian declared that she was the legitimate eldest daughter of the Yu family, of the Spirit Cat clan, and that speaking to Yu Xin at all was already the greatest concession, so she should not be ungrateful. Yu Xin fell silent and her sister sat down, telling her to pretend that her mother was dead, since she had managed just fine for all these years in the valley without interruption. Yu Xin grew angry because her older sister had promised back then to protect their mother, which was why she had left the family in the first place, so now that they had reunited, what was wrong with checking on her mother's situation? Yu Qian replied that there was indeed nothing wrong with that, but if Yu Xin's true identity were exposed and damaged the family's reputation, then she could not guarantee that the clan elders would not make her mother, a concubine, truly die. Hearing this, Yu Xin was utterly shocked. Yu Qian told her to listen carefully because no matter what she thought in her heart or what her identity had been in the past, in the end she had now officially become a biological sister who had always studied abroad and rarely made public appearances. The family had harmonious relationships and was a large family where sisters were friendly and respectful, and this was also the consistent corporate image of the group. So if she ever saw that defeated look on her younger sister's face again, she would have her corpse handled in some filthy corner. Completely devastated, Yu Xin dropped to her knees on the floor, saying that she had not seen her mother for more than 10 years, so she promised she would do nothing and say nothing more. She just needed to know how her mother was, and from then on, no matter what her older sister said, she would listen and work tirelessly. Yu Qian thought that rotten mud was still rotten mud and asked why Yu Xin was kneeling, because if others saw this, they would think she was being too harsh, since the second young lady of the family should not be kneeling on the ground like this, without dignity, begging others. Yu Qian told her to cheer up, saying that with such a beautiful face she should not look so sad. Suddenly, a man opened the door and apologized for the interruption. Secretary Wrong Wei. The director said it was fine, told him to come in, and also asked her sister not to kneel like that, saying that her attitude of admitting fault was very sincere. Wei handed over the will drafted by the father's lawyer according to his wishes, but upon reading the document, Yu Qian questioned whether an illegitimate daughter could receive 5% of the inheritance, concluding that the old man was truly generous, and that it was no wonder people worked so hard to become mistresses, since they could get something for free. Wei asked when it would be convenient to present a report on the situation of the Gaosheng group. Yu Qian placed the document on the table, told her sister to always remember the advice she had just received, and ordered her to leave. Outside, Yujin leaned against the wall waiting, and as soon as Wei came out, she rushed up to him and begged him to take her to her mother. He apologized, saying that he really wanted to help, but he did not have enough authority and no one could see the madam at that moment, advising her to give up the idea and calmly accept her role as the director's sister. Still worried, she asked whether he could at least tell her if her mother was well, but Wei said that regarding that, he knew nothing and simply walked away. Not knowing what to do, she collapsed to the ground and remained there. Meanwhile, in the reception area, Yuan Yi was calling out, saying he wanted to speak with the president's special assistant. The receptionist, expressionless, asked whether he had an appointment because otherwise they could not receive him. Yuan Yi asked her to go in and tell Yu Xin that her two friends were there to see her, since she would know who they were, but the receptionist apologized and said that without an appointment there was nothing she could do. Yuan Yi asked again for her to call Yu Xin, but the receptionist kept staring at him without expression, repeating that if he really wanted to see her, he needed to make an appointment. Yuan Yi began to lose patience, asking whether the woman was a repeating machine, since she kept repeating the same two sentences over and over, because if he could contact Yu Xin as she suggested, he would not need to be there. Trembling with anger, he began to draw his sword, saying that he was not joking. The protagonist was terrified and rushed over to calm him down, explaining that they were not in the valley while holding down the sword. Yuan Yi was shocked, because the senior brother had said that he had no talent, yet he possessed tremendous strength. The system notified him that he had gained another 0.1 point of favorability, and Yuan Yi began looking at him differently. The protagonist panicked, asking why he was staring like that. Another person arrived saying he wanted to see the president, and the receptionist behaved the same way, asking whether he had an appointment. The man said there was no need to schedule anything, because it would be enough to tell the director that Mr. Chin was present. The receptionist asked him to wait just a moment, because she would request that someone escort him to the upper floors. Yuan Yi became even more furious, demanding to know why that man could go in while he could not. The receptionist asked whether it was really necessary to explain, saying that if any random nobody could enter the group's company, then what would be the point of her job as receptionist? Wenhan realized a catastrophe was about to happen and tried to calm him down again, but Yuan Yi, on the verge of exploding, asked if he had also seen her roll her eyes, insisting he was not making it up. He tried to surge forward, but Wenhan held him back with all his strength, begging them not to push it further, saying he would call again and maybe Yushin was no longer in a meeting and could answer. Even so, they both thought that receptionist was extremely good at pretending. Sometime later, they managed to meet Yushin, and the protagonist asked what had happened at the press conference and whether she was really working at the group as the special assistant. Yushin asked whether he truly was not going back to the valley anymore. Wenhan started to worry about what might happen to the master if Yushin did not return, because she would probably order the protagonist to take over that job from now on. But then, who would be the bartender and who would serve the cigarettes without Yuxin in the valley, since the master would go mad every 3 days? Yuxin simply said she had a reason to stay there, and the protagonist asked what that reason was because maybe they could help solve it faster. Two women looked at them and asked if she was not the group's second young lady, but one of them commented that she had heard a small rumor saying she was not the true second young lady of the family at all, but an illegitimate daughter whose mother had been a mistress. The friend asked where she had seen that information because she also wanted to see it, and the gossiping woman said it was not just a rumor, telling her friend to analyze how that girl was entangled with two men, claiming that this was concrete proof. Yuan Yi began to emanate a terrifying killing aura, asking what was going on that day, because every idiot who showed up did not respect him in the slightest. The protagonist tried to restrain him again, asking if he had forgotten the rules. Yuan Yi tried to calm down, saying he would rip out those idiots' tongues. Wenhan explained that modern human society is governed by laws and asked if he wanted to go to jail or be stripped of his status by the association. Yuan Yi jumped up shouting, asking if they could really tolerate such an attitude. Wenhan said no, but told him not to argue with fools or compete with dwarfs, and ordered him to sit down. Yuan Yi remained furious, saying he had watched Yuxin grow up because she had been taken in by the master, So what those women were saying was not true, and it was all nonsense because they were wasting oxygen by living. He asked permission to end them, saying it would take less than a second. Wenhan just told him to sit, and Yuanyi finally listened to his senior brother, though he stressed that he was extremely angry. Yuxin said that actually those women were right. She had been born from a mistress, and the reason she left the valley was not because of her father, but simply because an opportunity appeared. Recently, she had been feeling uneasy, worried that something might have happened to her mother, but the family was keeping her somewhere, and with tears in her eyes, she begged the two of them to return to the valley because she still wanted to see her mother, and if she could not do that, she might not be able to go back there. Wenhan stood up saying he needed to make a call, and a few minutes later he returned and said he had just spoken to the master, who claimed she would stay behind to handle something, but did not specify what. Yusin started to ask what he meant, but the protagonist interrupted and explained that the master told him to stay there and look after her, and that besides, during this period, he had many things to resolve at school, so he would remain there and help her find her mother. He received a sincere look while Yuanyi cried at how good the senior brother was. Yushin thought that, in order not to trouble her, the protagonist had deliberately invented an excuse, concluding that he truly was a kind and gentle person. The system popped up repeatedly, showing that he had gained more familiarity points because the two of them felt it was wonderful to have a reliable senior brother supporting them. He was happy, thinking those points were easy to earn and that if he kept going, taking advantage while the moment was hot, he would level up quickly and obtain his abilities, which would make it easier to fight the boss later. He started wondering whether this comic really needed monster battles, trying to win even more of their admiration. The protagonist stood and said that he was the senior brother there, and therefore, it was his duty to look after the two of them. No matter what problems they faced in the future, even if he could not solve everything, he would do his best to help. The two of them began to see him as their only savior. Once again, the system showed that he gained multiple points with both of them, which made him cry with joy because gaining experience felt amazing. The system also displayed her stats and announced that the host could now experience 20% of Yuxin's abilities. Because the favorability system had been activated, he felt energy circulating through his body and noticed the two of them were still staring at him. He asked what kind of expressions they were making. Yusin, a little embarrassed, said she did not know exactly why, but he was becoming more and more pleasing to her eyes. Wenhan smiled shyly, thinking that his words had definitely moved those two kids. Yuanyi pressed a hand to his chest and said his pectoral muscles were huge. Wenhan was startled and shouted, asking what he was doing. The system warned that the protagonist was passively using Yusin's charm ability and asked how he felt. He was on the verge of losing his mind, saying that if the ability could not distinguish between people, fine, but it could at least distinguish genders. The next day, she was running around non-stop because everyone was trying to make things difficult for her, constantly asking for help. She was giving it everything she had to meet everyone's demands. One person asked her to make a tea cake because the leaders needed it during the department meeting in the afternoon. She thought she still had 5 documents to photocopy, 6 packages to pick up, and 7 documents to shred, plus 8 cups of coffee to prepare. The man simply turned his back as if he had not heard her response, saying that she was the director's special assistant and he was just an ordinary employee, so how could he possibly order her to do anything? She said that was not what she meant, but since things had reached this point, it was not a long story. The protagonist had told her that all she needed to do now was work tirelessly, and that no matter how much others made things hard for her, she should simply accept it and do it. She needed to make everyone think they had her completely under control so they would lower their guard and then she could act. Yushin agreed and said she would do everything she could to endure. Yuanyi showed the authorization code for workplace newcomers, and because of that, he understood that new recruits in human society would certainly face hardships when starting a new job, so they were cheering her on in spirit. Back in the present, she thought that her 2 senior brothers had been working hard to help her these past 2 weeks. For her convenience, they even rented an apartment in the neighborhood across from the company, and the landlady was so charmed by Yuanyi that she did not even want to charge rent. Besides, every day they helped her observe her sister's movements. Yuanyi said that the neighborhood across from the company was an excellent observation point and that absolutely no movement of her sisters would escape their control. She thought it was not just workplace bullying and not just being tangled up in trivial matters because every day she had to manage all of it since she could not disappoint them. At that moment, the system appeared for the protagonist again, saying he had gained another 0.1 point of favorability with Yujin. Meanwhile, Yuanyi had been watching closely and said that Yuqian was alone again, and that this was a perfect opportunity for them to follow her and see where she was going. The The protagonist agreed, and sometime later they arrived at a mansion. Yuanyi sensed that there was a barrier around the house, so it must be an area designated by the Immortal Cultivators Association. A few minutes later, Yuqian pulled up in front and got out of the car. Yuanyi analyzes the situation, saying that woman is the president of a major corporation and is usually unshakable. Yet every 3 days she drives alone to a country house on the outskirts of the city, so who would believe that nothing suspicious is happening there? The protagonist looks at the guards and says that since this is an area designated by the Immortal Cultivators Association, the security inside and outside the gates cannot be made up of ordinary people. The two of them sit down, and Yuanyi says that if he has permission, since this is a designated area, he can simply split everything open with his sword. Wenhan gives permission, telling him he can use his strength freely. Yuanyi becomes excited and asks him only to watch. However, the protagonist questions what would happen if, with such a devastating attack, he accidentally injured Yuxin's mother. Therefore, he asks Yuanyi to wait a bit, saying that when it is time to destroy everything, he will give the signal. Yu Qian drives away, and the protagonist checks his phone, seeing that this time it is only 3 o'clock. Yuanyi remarks that this place must certainly be an important clue. Wenhan says they will come back to explore more carefully when Yuxin has a weekend off. Yuanyi gives thanks that Yuxin's family does not run Pinduoduo, otherwise she would not have weekends. Suddenly, the protagonist senses something, and Yuanyi feels it too, telling him to wait because there is a third aura. He concentrates and scans the entire area, and Wenhan asks whether someone managed to follow them there. Yuanyi begins to draw his sword, and the person who had been observing realizes this. Yuanyi notes that this place is close to a special zone, so there is no problem using abilities, and he could easily eliminate that person. However, that aura abruptly disappears, and Yuanyi realizes the person has fled. The protagonist says that based on this, there are 2 possibilities. Either they really were followed, or that person was also there following the president. Yuanyi says this place is truly extraordinary. Sometime later, security remains impeccable with guards everywhere, while the 3 of them continue observing from afar. Yuxin is surprised, as she did not know her family had a designated area on the outskirts of the city. The protagonist explains that he has already identified the surroundings and that there is a secret passage to sneak into the courtyard, so they need to prepare to act. They run behind the trees and jump the wall while the guard is distracted. Inside the house, they begin searching the entire place, carefully avoiding the guards. Yuanyi says they have checked almost all 4 zones of the house and found nothing abnormal. Yuxin asks whether it is possible that her sister comes here purely for work and whether they are overthinking it. The protagonist says it makes no sense, but suddenly guards appear shouting, asking who they are. Yuanyi smiles and says they could not find the bathroom. Yuxin uses her ability to charm the guards, and they instantly fall for her. She smiles, thinking everything is resolved. 2 more guards appear, shouting that someone is there, but in the blink of an eye, Yuanyi charges forward so fast that pressure erupts around him, knocking the 2 out with ease. Wenhan wonders what he is even doing there, since the 2 of them can handle everything. Yuxin says they need to move those people somewhere and asks where they can hide them. The protagonist suggests hiding them in the tree. After tossing all the bodies up there, he comes back. Yuanyi asks his senior brother why Wenhan is bothering with such a small task, suggesting that he and Yuxin can handle it. The protagonist simply says he wants to feel like he is participating too. He gains more points with both of them and realizes it is becoming easier and easier to earn favorability. They continue searching the place and realize it does not seem ordinary at all and that there may be secret passages or hidden rooms, so they need to touch every wall and vase. The protagonist says his intuition is telling him there is definitely something suspicious there. Outside, a car approaches, and Yuanyi says it is Yu Qian, recognizing the sound of her car from afar. As soon as she arrives, she surveys the surroundings and shouts at 2 guards, asking whether they truly failed to notice that a dozen guards had been neutralized. The 2 are shocked and say there was no unusual movement in the house. She orders all guards to activate maximum alert and thoroughly search the entire mansion, as she wants the intruders immediately. The guards begin sweeping the area, and the 3 of them hide on the upper level of the house. Yuanyi, eager to use his ability at least once, asks whether it is finally time for him to split the place in 2. Wenhan tells him not to rush, saying the moment to confront them directly has not arrived yet, but Yuanyi says he can already hear footsteps approaching. Yuxin sighs, wondering what they should do. The protagonist tells everyone to stay close to him because if a cold approach does not work, it will not be too late to use force. The guards finally reach the room and fling the door open, but when they look inside, they see only 3 statues. They are confused, wondering whether there were really plaster statues in that room, and noting they look a bit strange. The 3 of them remain completely motionless. Wenhan is using 20% of the protagonist's aura and 10% of charm, allowing him to maintain that illusion. A few seconds later, the guards begin to leave, saying the room has been checked and confirmed safe, and that it seems the intruders fled through the south wall. Once they leave, Wenhan exhales in relief, asking whether this counts as acquiring a new ability on his own. Yuanyi is impressed, saying the senior brother is truly the best in the entire valley, a professional at deceiving people. Yuxin also celebrates, happy that they finally have a senior brother. All the guards regroup with Yuqian, reporting that zones 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the house are clear. She cannot believe it and decides to check personally. She goes to the room and asks whether it has already been inspected, since they came out in less than 2 seconds and must be slacking off. One guard panics and says, that is not the case. The three of them can feel her presence on the other side of the door. Yuxin is terrified, thinking that this time it may be unavoidable. The protagonist thinks that woman's intuition is extremely sharp. She is not an ordinary guard, so perhaps his current illusion abilities cannot deceive her. On the other hand, Yuanyi is thrilled, thinking that even if his senior brother tried to stop him, he would split the place in two. Yuqian slowly opens the door. Before she finishes opening it, the phone rings, and when she answers, she sees it is Wenning and wonders why she would call at such an hour. Yuqian closes the door and the three of them breathe a sigh of relief. As soon as she answers, she asks Aunt Wenning why she suddenly has time to call. The master says she saw the news and points out that Yuxin is a member of Wujian Valley. So when did Yuqian allow her to join the company? Yuqian is startled, unsure how to respond, and tries to deflect with her father's situation, saying he is gravely injured, but Wenning interrupts, asking whether Yu Tiangang is gravely injured and whether that is why Yu Qian assigned her disciple to do odd jobs for others in the company. Yu Qian begins to wonder whether that girl told her master everything that happened. Wenning asks what Yuxin means to her. Yu Qian replies that Yuxin is Wenning's direct disciple. The master asks what status her direct disciple holds. Yu Qian starts to stammer, but Wenning presses on, asking what Yuxin is. Yu Qian answers that her younger sister has a status second only to one person and above everyone else. Wenning begins to smile and says she is in the city and wants to see her little disciple immediately, then hangs up. Yu Qian, still shaken, wonders whether that woman truly came from so far away just because of Yuxin, and it seems the boss's daughter really is very lucky. Meanwhile, Wenning thinks that the protagonist truly is a competent babysitter. He had warned in advance that he had a bad feeling Yu Qian might mess things up, so he arranged beforehand that a blank message would be sent at the right moment, allowing his master to call and disperse the suspicion. Having fulfilled her role, Wenning looks out over the city, wondering what kind of fun she should find first. Yu Qian begins to leave the mansion, telling all the guards to remain there and continue searching. Yuanyi says Yu Qian has returned to the office, but he does not know what she plans to do. Yuxin is also relieved because the master's call came at exactly the right time and they are temporarily safe, but she does not know what they should do next. The protagonist points out that Yu Qian just answered the master's call and, judging by her tone, she took what was said very seriously and may have gone to speak with someone about it. Even so, she did not leave immediately, so there must be someone important in that mansion. Yuanyi says that Wenhan already knew the master would call. The protagonist explains that Yuxin's refusal to answer her sister's call would definitely make her suspicious, and on top of that, they caused quite a commotion in that mansion. Moreover, as a member of the Spirit Cat clan, her perception is sharper than that of other clan members, so it would have been impossible for her not to take action. That is why he asked the master to call at the appropriate moment to disperse the suspicion. Once again, the two of them are full of admiration, because he can even predict future moves, and once again he gains more points with both of them, since in their eyes the senior brother is intelligent and brave. Wenhan thinks that the master must have lied to them and probably said something else. Yu Qian is the current CEO of the company and also the princess of the Spirit Cat clan, so why did she seem so panicked when she received the call? Yuanyi explains that he has only recently started working, so he still does not know how powerful the master truly is. The protagonist grows curious and says that he would love to know a bit more about that, but Yuxin starts laughing, saying that he must surely have heard the legend about her, yet the protagonist remains confused. Yuanyi interrupts them both, asking what they should do now since they cannot just wait for her to leave. Wenhan explains that they will have to wait because every time Yu Qian enters her office, she stays there for at least 2 hours. Suddenly, they sense someone's presence. Yuanyi feels uneasy because he did not notice that a fourth person had sneaked in, yet the aura he is sensing feels somewhat familiar. Wei begins to appear, removing something from his body. Yuanyi exhales in relief when he sees that he used a magical artifact, which is good because it means he did not weaken. Yu-sin is happy to see Uncle Wei, and the protagonist asks whether they know each other. Yu-shin explains that this man is Yu Qian's secretary, but he has always taken care of her, so he will most likely not reveal what he is seeing here. The protagonist realizes that he is the same person who had been following them the other day, and moreover, his movements are a bit strange, so it is unlikely that he will report the three of them. Wei says that this is simply too blatant, warning that it is not too late for them to leave because if Yu Qian finds out, the consequences will be unimaginable. Yuxin notices that the office area seems quiet, and with that, she feels her sister's aura disappear. Yuanyi focuses and confirms the situation, saying that she entered the office and has not come out, yet her aura vanished. Wenhan starts thinking about it and shouts that apparently that house really does have something to hide, and as soon as Yu Qian leaves, they will investigate everything. Wei shouts that this is nonsense and that they need to leave immediately, and Wenhan asks him whether he was not lurking around that place for the very same reason. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.